Now we're live. All right.
If at first you don't succeed,
try again. Sorry, guys. We had some technical difficulties there. We weren't actually live. So
we were live with each other here.
Yeah, we were talking, but no one could hear us.
We were live, but not with you. So we're gonna share here a couple of times. And one of the things we would really like tonight, we're gonna talk about your gut, and specifically leaky gut. But as we're talking, I'm multitasking here. I'm not the best multitasker in the world. I'm sorry. I'm really good if I focus on
one thing at a time.
On something, yeah, one thing at a time.
Thank you guys for joining us. What my dad was saying was we have some really cool information tonight regarding the gut and all things gut related. And so if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask them. We will answer any questions that you have, as well as we just want you guys to interact with us. So if you think something's cool or if you have any thoughts, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and we'll just chat with you guys. So feel free to do that as we're talking tonight. Don't be afraid to interrupt us.
And don't be afraid to go to our YouTube channel, which we're live on YouTube right now as well. But our YouTube channel is Marissa and Mike, as well as you may be on one of our other Facebook channels, but we now have a Facebook page, Marissa and Mike.
Yep.
And so please like and share those. And without any further ado, we're gonna dive in here. You know, my tease for this video was, are you leaking? And specifically, we're going to talk about leaky gut because it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Depends on who you talk to, but 60 to 80% of your immune system is now considered to come from your gut. And we'll get into some more specific details about that. But I found this interesting. I found a quote from Hippocrates, who died, I think it is, in 370 AD. Now this, I mean, we're talking 1600 years ago. And here's the quote. He said, "All disease starts in the gut." Now, how the heck could he make a statement like that 1600 years ago? And I'll tell you why. It's because he understood inflammation. And he understood that disease came from inflammation. And he knew that the gut was the center of inflammation.
Yeah.
And so he was wise before his time. But unfortunately, a lot of the non-communicable diseases we face today start in your gut.
Yeah.
That's where they come from. And one of the things I wanted to do tonight, just to kind of set the stage, we had a real interesting, or Marissa was interesting in terms of, we now know what it is, but we didn't back then.
Yeah.
While you were in high school, I mean, interesting is a bad word. It was hell.
Yeah.
You went through a couple of years, you know, trying to play varsity sports with a really messed up gut.
Yeah.
So, you know, just kind of set the stage and tell the story, because I think there's going to be other people that are going to hear your story and go, "Oh my God, that's my kid."
Yeah. So whenever I started high school, I started waking up every morning sick. And by sick, I mean I was throwing up pretty much every morning. And so that was really a terrible time. And whenever we went to the doctor, every doctor wanted to give me a pregnancy test because I was having morning sickness. And by about the 6th or 7th pregnancy test, my dad finally spoke up and was like, "Look, if you guys give her another pregnancy test, we're walking out of this office." And we went through a lot of different doctors to try and figure out what was going on with me. I had been tested for celiac. I had multiple ultrasounds. I had the scope done, where they put the scope down my throat.
We scoped both ends.
Yeah. And so there was just a lot of time where I was had no answers, and I was sick all the time, which was just miserable. And it wasn't until I actually went to a chiropractor that was like, "I think you're just allergic to gluten." Well, not allergic, but I'm sensitive. And so it was right then that we started taking out gluten from my diet, and I dramatically started improving. But this was back before being gluten-free was cool.
Yeah, we're talking 10 years.
Yeah, we're talking
10 years ago. And
no, it's, oh man, Yeah, it's been 10, 11,
10, 11,
almost, yeah, 10, 11 years ago.
This was back before, way before it was cool to be gluten free.
This was back before they had gluten free in the grocery stores.
Yeah, we were making our own gluten free. We knew
stuff.
An apple was gluten free.
Yeah,
an orange was gluten free.
We knew I could have just meat.
Meat was gluten free. Veggies were gluten free.
Yeah, and so this was a time whenever it was really hard for me to find bread that was gluten free, and most of them tasted like cardboard.
I remember when we found Udi's.
Yes,
and it was oh my God, it's a miracle. So praise good. God, amen, hallelujah. We have a bread that at least resembles bread.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that was something that I struggled with. And so now that I've, been on this path for the last 10 years, it's really interesting to me to find out that so much of my immune system comes from my gut. And it just makes so much more sense why it was affecting my entire body just by eating gluten. I was having eczema breakouts for most of my life, which trigger from my gluten sensitivity. I was not only physically sick, but I would have really bad headaches. I was getting injured easier. Like I had sometimes where I would like roll my ankle and stuff. And we found out that that was actually contributed from me eating gluten too. So there's just a lot of crazy things that you wouldn't think matter from your gut, but it really does. And so I'll have my dad talk some more about just how cool the gut is.
They'd rather hear from you, but here's a couple of things that you need to understand about your gut. Okay, so we'll break it down into two things that it does. So obviously, your gut is responsible for breaking down the food that you put in your mouth and making it bioavailable or usable for your body, for the cells in your body to make energy with, right? That's mission one, you would think. So what's going on there? Well, the minute you put food in your mouth, it begins to be broken down. It gets to your stomach, really powerful acids, right on the other side of your stomach, really powerful bile salts. And then it goes into the small intestine where it's further broken down in your gut. But the question is, how is it broken down? And here's where the immune system part comes in. And here's the really funky part about your gut. You don't digest most of your food. The microbes, the bacteria, the spores, the viruses. Yes, there's viruses that live in your gut, and even friendly parasites. They break down most of your food and turn it into usable protein and sugar chains. So for example, we like to think of ourselves as humans as the apex predator on the planet. We're the smartest thing here. We're the one that's got it going on right. We're the one that knows right from wrong, that can reason, that has a sense of consciousness, right? And we thought, as we unwrapped the human genome, we were so excited that we were going to get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of gene sequences that it would explain everything to us about why we're the way we are, and we would solve all disease and everything. And what we found out is you've got about 22 to 23,000 functional gene sequences. Now, let me mess with your mind. An earthworm has 40,000. You're not as sophisticated as an earthworm. Matter of fact, the earthworm's genes are more sophisticated. Their genome is more sophisticated than yours. But here's what we've learned how to do, and it's all in our gut. We've learned to use or conscript the trillions of bacteria and parasites and viruses that live in our gut that give us another 2 to 3 million functional gene sequences, which does make us the apex predator. But we're not doing it ourselves. Somebody else is doing it for us. It's a symbiotic relationship. We provide a great place for those bacteria to live. They break down our food, and they do a big part of our immune system for us in our gut. So let me just give you an idea how many of these critters there are. So it depends on who you talk to, but I'm going to talk in simple numbers. So let's just say there was 1 trillion. There's probably way more than this, but there's 1 trillion cells in your body that are human. If there's 1 trillion that are human, there's 10 trillion that aren't, that are bacteria, something else, not human. They have their own DNA. And then on top of that, remember, your gut breaks down the food to carry it to your body to make energy. That energy is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. It's made by these bacteria inside of each of the cells in your body that are descendants from an ancient bacteria that's been living in us now ever since we've been human. And there are somewhere around 4 quadrillion. That's one with 15 zeros after it. 4 quadrillion of those critters, and they have their own DNA. It's not human DNA, it's their own DNA. And they make all of the energy that you run off. As a matter of fact, you have about 3 seconds of ATP stored. Without it, you fall on the floor dead. 3 seconds. You are a just-in-time machine, and it all comes from the gut. And so going back to what was going on with Marissa, the problem is her gut biome was screwed up. And the initial diagnosis we got was gluten. Well, gluten probably had a lot to do with it, but gluten was actually probably the carrier.
Right.
And what gluten was probably the carrier for was a herbicide called Roundup, glyphosate, which was wreaking havoc in her gut biome from the wheat. And so there you go.
Yeah.
Now's a good time to do this. For those of you, I mean, there's been tons of stories. There's lawsuits on TV, people suing Monsanto now for Roundup causing cancer. And we generally know that it's not something you want to be exposed to. But here's something you probably don't know. If you ask people what Roundup is, people will tell you it's a herbicide. It's designed to kill a plant. You spray it on the plant, right? It goes in and kills the plant. That's not how it works. Take a second, and I want you to think, what do you think? Now, you know it's not a herbicide because I just told you that. What do you think they patented glyphosate as? It's not a herbicide. It's patented as an antibiotic. Because here's what it does. It goes into the soil, and it kills not the bad bacteria, it kills all the good ones. They targeted the good ones so the bad ones would thrive. And then when the bad ones take over, they kill the plants.
Yeah.
And so when you ingest plants that have been sprayed with glyphosate, it ends up in your gut. Mm-hmm. It's an antibiotic. What do antibiotics do once they get in your gut? They wreak havoc on the gut biome. And so we are ingesting it in everything.
So it's really interesting that you say that, because of the dramatic increase of gluten intolerant or celiac disease people that have shown up in the last 10 years. And they're now assuming that a lot of it may be because of Roundup and the use of it. That wasn't the case, 30 years ago. It wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And so there's so many people who are gluten intolerant or having all of these stomach issues now. And so it's really a question of if that is what's affecting
what actually is the cause. But if cutting out the gluten cuts out the glyphosate and solves the problem,
then there it is.
Great.
Yeah.
But they've been telling us for years that humans could consume glyphosate, and when they got their patent, the patent said, well, it doesn't affect human cells. Okay, maybe it doesn't, but more of you's not human than it is, and it does affect the bacteria that aren't human. So therefore, it severely screws with your gut biome. So we said we were going to talk about leaky gut. So real quick, I got to give you an explanation of how your gut works here. So you're going to eat the food, it's going to go through your stomach, going to get the stomach acid, going to get the bile salts. Now it's in the small intestine where it's weaving back and forth, back and forth, back and forth through the small intestines. There's these little things like finger called cilia that the food passes in between. And while it's going through there, every nanometer of your gut lining is covered with these bacteria, these that aren't human, that digest, break down the good and the bad. And there's a 1 cell layer thick, it's called the endothelium, So between your intestine wall, the capillaries, and there's this endothelial layer that's one cell thick. So pull a hair out of your head, cut it in half, and then shave it about 10 more times, and it's a lot thinner than that. That protects you from bad stuff getting out of your gut into your blood system. And when it gets into that capillary and it's a pathogen or it's food that wasn't properly diagnosed, something that's not supposed to be there, your body has a massive autoimmune response to that. And I mean massive. That's why 65% of the white blood cells in your body are down in your gut next to that endothelial layer in order to pounce on anything that gets through there that's not supposed. 65%. So I think you could rationalize that your body thinks that area is pretty important as a defense zone if 65% of your white blood cells are there. So when things like glyphosate or bad bacteria or antibiotics, antibiotics in the last 20, 30 years have wreaked more havoc on the gut biome than, from what I'm reading, what I'm studying. We eat a lot of bad food, but we take way too many antibiotics. And here's another piece of that puzzle. So let's say when Marissa's a child, she's in my home and she's one of those kids that's getting chronic ear infections or nasal infections or whatever, and we're always running down to the doctor. And what's the doctor do? Gives you an antibiotic. Now, we didn't do that, but if you are, you need to understand this. When she takes those antibiotics, not only does it mess with her gut, but everybody else in the house is exposed to that antibiotic. Even though you're not taking them, we can test you and know what antibiotic she's taking just by you living in the same house, because we all have a biome that around us, from the skin that's sloughing off, from the air that we breathe out, other gases. Oh, what the heck? We'll just say it when you fart, if you burp, if you breathe out, if you cough, if you sneeze, you have a cloud around you, a biome that consists of everything that's inside you, and everybody else in your home is exposed to it, whether you want them to be or not. And so we've had this cumulative effect on the gut that's had a tremendous negative impact. And so here's what leaky gut is. And we spent a lot of time to get to this, but leaky gut is that little layer that protects you, that one cell thick layer is open. It's called loose junctions. And food can get through that junction into the capillary when it's not supposed to. And the body just absolutely freaks out. Has this massive immune response, which triggers inflammation in your body. And inflammation is the mother of all disease. So what can you do to work on your gut and leaky gut? Well, so for Marissa, 14 years ago, there weren't a lot of things. We just had to massively clean up the diet.
Yep.
Okay. Today, what everybody's being told to do is take a whole bunch of probiotics.
Right.
Okay. And that may have sounded like I'm anti-probiotic. I'm not. Very pro-probiotic, the right kind of probiotic. So in regards to leaky gut and probiotics, we have the mentality in America right now that if a little bit is good, a lot must be a whole lot better.
Yeah.
So our first exposure, so we were told to go to the store, go to somebody like Sprouts or something, and go get the ones from the refrigerated section.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yep.
Going through and
Sure
looking at how many billions we could get.
Yep.
And bringing your first probiotic home.
Sure do. And I had it sit in the fridge.
And it went in the fridge.
Yep.
Okay. And here's what I didn't know then. I know now. If it has to be refrigerated in the store, if it can't even stand the shelf heat, the minute you put it in your mouth, by the time it's down to about right here, it's 98.6. If it can't stand the shelf heat in the store, how the hell is it going to live through your gut to get to your small intestine?
It doesn't.
And it doesn't mean they don't help, even though they're dead by the time your body uses the pieces and can use it as food. And as the probiotic can turn into a prebiotic. And I don't want to get real technical, but getting the ones out of the refrigerated section isn't the magic. The magic is gut survivability. From here down to the small intestine, what percentage of what you're taking it is alive and can function when it gets down there. That's the secret. And so it's not more is better. There for a while, it was like, oh my God, if you could get 200 billion strains, no, not so much. It's about what actually makes it, and it's what the strains are. And we're not going to get into that. That's a whole nother thing, and we will do that. But I will throw a term out to you that we're working on. You can message me if you want to know. I'm not going to name company names and stuff on here, but the newest of the new thing is spore probiotics. So the probiotics inside a spore that gets through your gut, gets past the bile salts, and then there's literally a messaging system that it knows when to come out of the spore, and the survivability rates are through the freaking roof. And so, and what's funny is that's not something that's been made in a lab. Those things have been back. They are in the dust that blows out of the desert. All they've done is figure out that they were there, and then how to recreate them. It's not something that somebody made up in a lab. Mother Nature created it. So the very definition of a probiotic says that it has to be alive once it gets down there, and the host, you and I, have to benefit from it for it to be a probiotic. So we got a lot of homework to do on that piece of the puzzle. And then there are strains of gut bacteria that you can't take in a probiotic. Not possible. They will not survive. There's no way to get them there. And the only way you get them is to grow them. The good news is you have them, a few of them, no matter, pretty much no matter how bad off your gut is, and given the right prebiotics, you can grow them. And so it's just a matter of beginning to do the right things, and we'll come back and cover a lot more about that. But the good news is there's hope. We're learning a ton fast. We know so much more than we knew, just a little while ago. Like, I know one of the things, and I've been talking for a long time here, but with Winston, my grandson, who's now 8 months old. I mean, we've been concerned about his biome from birth and tried to do things to make sure that, one of the things for a baby, the baby gets pretty much 100% of its initial biome from mom, and most of it comes from the birthing.
Yeah, from the birthing process, from him going through the birth canal. And if you didn't know, I ended up having a C-section birth. So that's something that we've been very concerned about, is making sure that we take care of his gut, and that that's one of the reasons that I've breastfed for so long. I'm still breastfeeding. He's only ever had breast milk, and I also do give my son a probiotic as well in his milk every day. And so that's something that I'm definitely trying to make sure that I take care of, is his gut. And so that's something that, I'm very passionate about, is, of course, my son, because I want him to be healthy and happy and have all the best things in life. So
we didn't want to go forever. One of the things I would be interested in, if anybody's got any questions, if you're on the live feed, you can type in, what have you done for your gut, or if you have questions about it, I'd be happy to answer them. One of the things I want you to understand, I believe that leaky gut is top 3, if not top 2, causes of a lot of the reasons people end up in the doctor's office. And leaky gut shows up as fibromyalgia, as something something else, a lot of something else. It can have a tremendous impact on your heart, on your brain, on your cognitive function. I'm gonna throw a word at you. It's called lipopolysaccharides, and it's a really bad critter that's made by the bad bacteria in your gut that gets into your bloodstream because of leaky gut. And LPS for short, lipopolysaccharides. You want to go Google something and ruin your evening, look at what lipopolysaccharides do to you. And the levels that are testing now in modern day Americans, it just keeps going up and up and up and up as we continue to devastate our gut biome, which wants to protect us from things like LPSs, but it can't because we've punched all these holes in our gut, and the bad guys in your gut make it, and it just gets right out, and it goes straight to your brain, it goes straight to your liver, it goes straight to your heart, and they wreak havoc. So imagine this, you all know what Pac-Man is, the little. So imagine these things getting out that cause all of these problems. They're a negative Pac-Man. And once they're out in your system, it requires tremendous amounts of autoimmune resources to rein them back in, because they weren't designed to be out there. Our body was designed to keep them in the digestive tract, and just they end up coming out the other end. But that's not happening now. So we'll come back and we'll talk about LPS. We'll do a deal just on probiotics, and they'll be in our YouTube channel under gut. But the whole purpose of tonight is I want you to know that if you are having problems, number one, there's hope. Happy to talk to you about that. Your nutrition plays a huge role. Sugar plays a huge role. There are tests you can do. You can have your gut biome tested, and they'll tell you how many active strains that you have in there. Hey, Jason. Hey, Barbara. Appreciate you guys popping on. And we'll talk about those things. If you want to have a conversation about Spore probiotics, just send me a message on one of the Facebook channels, or if you've got my number, we may have somebody on from a couple of those companies to talk about it. It's amazingly fascinating, the stuff that we're learning now. But here's what it boils down to. Priscilla says 2.7 billion enough. It all depends on how many of that 2.7 billion make it past your stomach and into your small intestines alive.
Yep.
It's about gut survivability. And so they'll help, but the more of them that survive, the better it is. So what's cool is we know answers to a lot of things now. The problem is, as Americans, we tend to think we're immune to this shit. I mean, I beat my head against the wall all the time with people that just look at me with that glazed over look and go, hey, it's not going to happen to me. I'm not sick yet. And you're right, yet. So here's what you need to understand. For the first time in the history of the United States, the actuarial tables have turned. Your kids aren't going to live as long as you are. It's crazy. And it's because of obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure. It's what I call ANDAS. People in America don't just have one thing. They have diabetes and high blood pressure, and they're obese, and they have chronic inflammation. That's what's going on with Corona now. We're not going to talk about it, but one of the reasons Americans, you have these just freaky things where people that you would think are normally healthy is, if I've heard this one time, I've heard it 1,000 times. You ask people how healthy they are. And here's the answer. Well, as long as I take all my medicines, I'm fine. As long as I take my metformin, my lisinopril, and whatever 2 or 3 other things I'm taking, metformin's diabetes medicine, lisinopril's blood pressure medicine, those are the top ones, I'm fine. No, you're not. You're not fine. You're not going to live as long. every one of those you stack on, you just take time off the back end. But here's the sad part. It's not about the loss of years. It's about the quality of life on the back end. We have more and more Americans. Alzheimer's is through the freaking roof. 30 years from now, Alzheimer's alone is going to bankrupt our company. There's no way we can put everybody in a memory care unit that's going to need to be in a memory care unit 30 years from now. You think coronas, I mean, look at the growth curve for Alzheimer's. And then if you lump Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's together, it's scare the living crap out of you. And 90%, it's preventable. We're doing it to ourselves by not, Alzheimer's starts in your gut. Those amyloid plaques show up 20 to 30 years in your gut before they ever show up in your brain.
Yep.
And that's a whole nother story. So my plea to you is, sometimes I feel like John the Baptist, the guy, voice in the wilderness crying, repent. Look, I got really sick. And I'm not going to go through my story tonight other than to tell you that I had a heart cath go horribly bad, almost lost a leg, went septic, turned into cancer, lost my thyroid, and had 45 doctors, fired them all, and healed myself nutritionally. But I'm 60. I don't have a thyroid, and I've had cancer and now run circles around most people and all people my age, and I do it without the major hormone regulating organ in my body because I got my own cocktail. I do it myself, and I don't guinea pig you guys on stuff. I practice what I preach, at least on myself. A prophet's never welcome in his own hometown. I had to learn that with family. You got to be real careful. They don't necessarily want to do what I'm willing to do, but my goal is to live to be 150. My mission is to give you the information so that you can come with me. I really believe that 150 is way doable, because if I can go from 60 to 100 between the next 40 years, the advances we're going to have in things like peptides and stem cell therapy, I'm just going to be, I'm going to be able to rebuild myself multiple. I know I am. We're going to have somebody on here within the next couple of months. We're going to talk about peptides. Oh my God. It's the future is here, and we are now able to undo the damage that's been done and to regenerate and recreate through things like stem cell and things like peptides and putting the right probiotics in our gut and the right nutrition, so that when the regeneration occurs, you have the nutrients to build on. So it's the mortar for the bricks. It's building the right brick. It's kennel firing the brick. And so anyhow, I'm on a rant here. I know my daughter's looking at me. I've only got 18 hours of this stuff that I'd like to get out. So anyhow, we appreciate you guys.
Yes,
Tori,
you.
thanks.
Yes,
Priscilla, thanks for popping on. And you guys know we're here. If you've got Corona questions, I took about 15 calls today. So I'm happy to do that, or pop on, or I'm starting to do some Zoom calls for people at work and stuff, just to go through with their employees and have an honest conversation about what it's like. So we love you guys.
Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you guys on Sunday.
Yep. Many blessings.
Bye.
Bye-bye.